technology has failed on this end in terms of the microphones, but we have a backup system, thank goodness, for the good old telephone. So nice to see those of you who are on the line. Thank you so much for making it here. I'm going to put on my glasses so I can see this tiny little chat here and just check in with people. I notice people are recognising other people that are here. If you can just check in, let us know who you are, where you're from. I know not everybody wants to be, you know, that much out there, but those of you who are, it's nice to just see the different countries and places that we have represented here and see some names we recognise. Yes, up in the UK, it's morning up there, afternoon here in Perth. Melbourne, Bernadette, nice to see you. And Martine, Sue, Karen, Bridget, Jenny. Oh my gosh, it's moving too quickly. Munich, Germany. A couple of people from Munich, Germany. Colorado, my goodness, Elizabeth, it's the middle of the night, isn't it? Oxford, France, Anita, yes. Fiona, Megan, all right. Okay. Yeah, so nice to see. This is what I like too about doing these things, is that people start to connect with each other too, and I know that this energy healing, emotional healing world is not huge, and that means that we can connect up with people that we know. Nice to have you on the line. I'm going to give you as much as I can in the next hour or so that's helpful for you on your journey towards self-acceptance. Let's move on quickly and get through all the disclaimers and the kind of group guidelines and so on. By participating, you acknowledge and understand that this is just educational purposes that I'm providing you this information. It's not medical advice. The techniques I'm going to be using or referring to, simple energy techniques, what I'm calling now intention-based energy process, and PET, provocative energy techniques. While they've caused impressive results for many people, there's no guarantee that they will help you achieve your goals or be as painless and pain-free as they have been for others. You have to take full responsibility for your physical and mental health and consult your physician regarding and/or therapist regarding the use of these techniques, particularly if you're dealing with mental health issues and severe ones. Just a couple of reminders, really. The call is being recorded. By participating, you already give permission to being recorded. I may take questions. I certainly am interested in having people type in the chat, and there'll be a couple of times I'm going to ask you questions. I'd love you to have input. I want to make this interactive as much as possible. I'll try and answer as many questions as I can and respond to as much as I can in this time. If we do have the chance to speak with me, you must have a headset or a headphone, otherwise there will be a nasty echo. All right, so, here's another thing too. I know that I mentioned this in the when you registered, that there is, I certainly am going to make an offer to people who want to go deeper with this at the end of the program, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to give you good value for the next hour. I'm going to give you as much content and as much stuff you can use on how you can use SET, simple energy techniques, tapping, and also my new intention-based energy process for moving through and releasing emotional attachments and things that are stopping you from having this wonderful experience of being able to accept yourself. All right, so I need to put my glasses on. Now, some of you are not familiar with having me with glasses on. You see me in workshops where I only need glasses for reading this tiny little chat here. I see in the meantime that other people that have mentioned where they're coming from Switzerland and Germany and UK and all that stuff. Lovely to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. Here's our aim. This is where we're going. This is what we're doing this for. My aim is to help you further along the line to freeing yourself from the prison of judgment, self-criticism, fear, inertia, and self-sabotage that comes from being down on yourself and attacking yourself, kicking yourself. You know, I said to one person, I saw a poster once that said, the beatings will continue until morale improves. And I've had to use that line with a number of clients because it seems like we're using that process of beating ourselves up as a way of trying to get ourselves to change. And all it needs to is more and more imprisonment and more constriction. I want to help you to find the gifts in your shadow and help you to accept all parts of you, not just the good parts, all parts of you. including the good parts, because, you know, some people are much better at accepting the bad parts of themselves than they are the good. So classes keep fogging up here. As I've been running around trying to get spare microphones and stuff like that in here, and it's turned out to be a reasonably warm afternoon. We started out, you know, cloudy and rainy, and here it is, warm afternoon. Want to help you free up your energy, help you to access your inner power. It's surprising how much energy you can get when you release these attachments, some of which we've held on to for years. And ultimately, I want to help you to experience more joy and inner peace in your life. So this got work here. All right. Well, in my travels, I found there's a negative belief that's kind of almost universal. It's certainly been in every country that I've presented in, every country that I have visited. People hold on to or are affected negatively by one particular universal negative belief. And I reckon probably you could guess what it is. It's I'm not enough. And there's a lot of different variations of this theme. The most common one is I'm not good enough. You know, but it might be I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not handsome enough, I'm not rich enough, which is a big one these days for a lot of people. I'm not confident enough. I'm just not enough. And, you know, underneath that, there's a whole lot of stuff. And this is the kind of stuff that we're going to be getting into. But I'm just curious, if you are on here because you don't accept something about yourself, and that's just about everybody. We've got things that we don't like about ourselves, things that we don't accept about ourselves. What is yours? You know, what are the things that you don't accept about yourself? And why can't you accept yourself if you're in that category of someone who has trouble with that? Please type your answer in the chat. It's interesting just to get a little bit of interaction happening. So down in the left-hand corner, if you type a message into the chat and press send, then we will all be able to read it. And we'll start to find out whether we have regular humans, or as Dr. Larry Nims would say, ambulatory neurotics in the group. So I see some people typing. Just wait for that to come through. Sometimes there's a little bit of a delay with this. While you're waiting, just grab your favourite beverage and have a sip. Let's see some of the issues that we're dealing with, and maybe we can get some leverage on those with you and for you. That's the aim. Why don't you accept yourself, or what is it you don't accept about yourself? So, Anand, thank you. I'm not perfect enough. Would like to be excellent in everything I do. Wow, that's an interesting one. And so the first question is going to be, where did you learn that you have to be excellent in everything you do? You know, it's a wonderful thing to strive for excellence, but it's another thing to feel constantly not perfect enough, not good enough because of that. Elizabeth, been taught rigidly that I'm not good enough for much of anything. Yeah, so often this is kind of spread across a whole bunch of our lives. And as we'll get into, when you've got these beliefs that kind of cut across everything, like I'm not good enough in all areas of my life, or not good for much of anything, or whatever, when you start doing tapping on that, you start to see where it does and where it doesn't apply. Fiona, I was never good enough as a child, as a person, and anything I did. All right, so what does that mean about you now? What are you holding now? What are you holding on to now about your own belief, your own negative stuff? Come on, let's get some more. Michelle, I'm not good enough. What I do is never quite good enough. Yep. Okay. Sue, I'm just not enough as I am. Have to do more to prove I'm something. Yeah, this is kind of like our endless quest to prove ourselves. And because we're holding the feeling of not being good enough inside ourselves, it's never satisfied. It's never going to really be enough no matter what you do, because the feeling is inside. So yeah, okay, so sadness is what you feel about that. And I hope, by the way, and now's a good time to get started. Here's a little reminder for those of you who already know the tapping, to start tapping. So start tapping and keep tapping through the entire process. Those of you who know the way we do tapping, when I say we, myself and Dr. David Lake, We do tapping the whole time, just continual tapping. And if you tap along while I'm talking or when I'm working with other people or while other people are putting stuff in the chat, there's going to be sometimes things that resonate for you, and there's going to be sometimes when they don't, but you're going to get the benefits of what we call energy toning, where even if you're not focusing directly on issues, you get a benefit for your energy system and you get a benefit for your own chemical, emotional system by, the tapping releasing endorphins, by the tapping suppressing the stress chemicals in your system and stuff like that. So let's all start tapping. Now, those of you who don't know the tapping, hey, let's do something interesting that has been shown by research to really help to reduce stress, but also to help you to release emotional attachments to lots of this stuff that's causing your constricted feelings and non-self-acceptance. So you can tap in any order on any of the points, and if you're not somewhere that you're worried about being seen in public, you can tap on the upper body points, start of the eyebrow, side of the eye, under the eye, top of the cheek, under the nose, under the collarbone, under the arm. And if you're watching, I'm going to ask you to be tapping the whole time. Now, obviously, you can tap on the hand points as well, but we like to tap on the finger points using the thumb of the same hand, just to tap down on the side of the index finger, middle finger, ring finger, and little finger. And this is something that you can do. It's non-fatiguing, and you can do this if you're out in public somewhere. Some people call in on workstations and all kinds of things, or if there's someone in the background, you can just be tapping gently on these points like this without anyone really noticing very much, especially if your hand is hidden. You can also wrap around and tap on the side of the thumb like this if you want with the index finger or the middle finger. And that tapping in any order, any sequence, if you like to tap on top of the head or you like to tap here or whatever, just tapping the whole time is really good. Thank you for giving me some of those examples. I see there's more and people still coming in with examples. I just think because I can kind of sense that there's a lot of emotion associated with this as well, that now's the time to start tapping, because we want the tapping to get in and start shifting some of the feelings, which start helping some of the feelings to move would be more a better way of saying that, because your feelings are meant to move you and move through you. And when they do, and when you get back into a state of flow, then you can see things from a lot of different perspectives rather than being stuck with the one perspective. I'm shy, I'm not confident enough, I'm not good enough at anything, or whatever that constricted way of seeing yourself or what you do is. So people giving examples, and I've been very good most of the things I picked up. Also grew up in a small town, so I had to be better than those around me to be ready to compete in the larger world outside. And so the beliefs can come out of those experiences. And since you know what some of those experiences are that have created those beliefs, you can go back and apply tapping to them. Thomas, interesting, I'm not great enough. I feel always small like a child. Okay. So that's a childlike perspective, which means that you are getting drawn into perhaps a past perspective that you've been in where you were a child, and situations are triggering you back into that where there's unprocessed material. Just starting to add the tapping into those feelings that you have and the thoughts that go with them is the starting point of getting things to get leverage on changing them. And hopefully I can give you a few more tips to go even deeper and get more leverage on that. Some of the, again, Karen, you say I could get confused, fear of denial. Those fears are behind the negative beliefs that you have about yourself. Okay, Elizabeth, you're saying, say together we all can not be good enough. What power we have. If we can all say, well, I actually say if you can say I'm not good enough, and it has no trigger for you, it doesn't hook you, it doesn't constrict you, it doesn't constrain you, that thought then is just a thought. If it doesn't trigger any emotional reaction, then it has no power over you whatsoever. All right, so when I've asked people what has, why don't you accept yourself, what don't you accept about yourself, and so on, these are kind of things that they come up with, and some of these are things that people have brought up. So we don't accept ourselves because because we have problems. It's fairly universal when you have a problem that you are going to blame yourself for having that problem. So now you've got two problems. You've got the problem itself, and then you've got the blaming yourself for having the problem. And this is something I discovered when I did my own 30-day self-acceptance trial, which some of you have read about before, and you can certainly go and read about on our website, was that I realized that that second problem of not accepting myself because I had the problem was a bigger problem itself. And in fact, it's like putting a lid on it. When you have a problem and then you're upset and angry at yourself for having the problem, the anger is like kind of holding that problem down. And it's something you need to do the tapping on first before you can access the problem that you're targeting. I don't accept myself because I don't do the things I should do, I do things I shouldn't do, or I did something bad in the past and therefore I deserve to be punished. And then we think thoughts that are bad and evil, and we shouldn't think those thoughts. So then we have the thought, we react to it, and then we're upset at ourselves for having that thought. When the truth is that your mind wants to think. It wants to think in all kinds of possibilities all over the shop, and it's the attachment to those thoughts that's the problem, rather than the thoughts themselves. And so when you have an attachment to that you have a challenge, and sometimes that attachment is caused by trying to resist. And paradoxically, when you can accept and allow those negative, bad thoughts to be there without having to believe them or without having to follow them, then they calm down, and the tapping can help you to do this. I don't accept myself because I haven't achieved the success I should have. Some people have already mentioned this kind of one. And my performance at some significant test or life task was below some arbitrary standard. And, I ran another version of this this morning. I was mentioning, I remember hearing Tony Robbins say one time he was working with this guy, and this guy was completely down on himself and feeling like a complete failure because he only had a net worth of like $5 million or something, and he should have had a net worth of $25 million. And so he's comparing himself to all these people who are, got tens of millions, and therefore he's like, I am inferior. And a lot of people I've worked with are doing the same thing. It's just the numbers have changed. That's the only real difference, because there's some standard that I should be at that I am not at, and therefore that makes me less than, and therefore I'm not acceptable, and therefore I have to make myself feel bad about that in order to motivate myself to get to do what I should do. And instead of motivating us, it depresses us even more. And I also, I don't accept myself because I don't know what I want, or I don't know the best way to proceed. So therefore that means that there's something faulty or something bad about me. All right, well, a lot of people, when they're faced with this, they just try to say, okay, well, I need to deal with my self-acceptance problem. I need to be more positive. I need to be more nice to myself. And unfortunately, that hasn't worked very long. And the reason why is because a lot of our blocks are unconscious. They come from past negative experiences, and they've gone into our unconscious guidance system known as our beliefs, so they're affecting us outside of our conscious awareness. And it's those unconscious beliefs that we ultimately want to bring this to the surface and do something about. And they have typically come from, as I mentioned, negative past experiences where some significant other did not accept us. And so the generalization becomes, since this godlike person or this superior person or this authority didn't accept me, therefore I can't be acceptable as a person. And then we start on a lifelong quest to gain acceptance, and we may be later still trying to gain acceptance from someone who died 20, 30 years ago. I've seen that happen in many, many cases through, trying to do good or trying to be better or trying to be good enough, whatever it is. And yet we've internalized the feeling of not being good enough no matter what we do. And so that becomes a general rule that we apply. I want to say a couple of things about acceptance before we move on, because a lot of people see acceptance as a negative thing. Like acceptance is like giving in. And it doesn't mean that. Acceptance doesn't mean you approve of the problem. It doesn't mean you agree with the problem. It doesn't mean that you are giving up on solving it at all. It doesn't mean that you are voting good or bad and using one or the other, which is what we want to do. We're capable as humans of both believing that we are a good person and believing we are a bad person at the same time. And sometimes we have this kind of internal civil war where we have the competing parts of us, you know, or it depends how we got out of bed today, what side of bed we got out on, whether we're a good person today or whether we're a bad person today. And what we want is one side to win, you know, you're either a good person or a bad person, rather than that you have a person and you're capable of manifesting all of these different things. So acceptance is not about choosing good or bad. And acceptance is not about denying or avoiding the problem. What it is a process of growing through change, allowing both sides of the issue to be real rather than having to vote that one is real and the other one isn't. It helps you to move and get out of being stuck, particularly towards life in general. And ultimately, when you get over this, you rise above these negative beliefs and let them go, and they no longer keep you stuck on the continuum where you have to evaluate your behaviour based on your performance or whatever, and they don't define you any longer. These points, by the way, were all put together by my good friend Dr. David Lake, who's not with me right now, so I want to just acknowledge that this comes from something that he wrote a few years back, which is particularly helpful. We used to use it in our self-acceptance workshops. So thanks to David in his absence for passing this on to me. Acceptance is learning not only through mastery but also through mistakes. And ultimately, when you're accepting another person, you redefine your connection to them despite the issue. So the connection becomes more important than the issue. As David often says, you know, do you want to be right or do you want to have a relationship? And sometimes people want to be right more than they want to have a relationship, because being you know, wrong or acknowledging that they're wrong or letting the other person be right when they're doing a bad thing is against our personal rule. Acceptance ultimately is a state of being resonates with higher truth, and it coexists with and it welcomes love and forgiveness, in particular of yourself. And the real truth of it is that until you accept yourself as you are, you cannot change. You know, I love this quote. I wish I knew who was the first person to come up with this, that you can, it should say, I put this up this morning, I read from it, I didn't even notice that there's a typo here. This should say, you can go anywhere you want as long as you're willing to start from where you are. You can go anywhere you want and do anything that you want ultimately, as long as you're willing to start from where you are. And the problem is that we're not willing to start from where we are, because where we are is not where we should be, and the kind of person we are is not the kind of person that we should be. So we want to be the kind of person that we should be. And the challenge is we don't want to start with the kind of person we are right now. We don't want to start from where we are. And yet the challenge is until we come to where we are, we can't go to where we want to be. Until we accept our current limitations, we can't move beyond them. And that seems a strange thing, because the fear is that if I accept my limitations, then I am going to be stuck with them. The opposite happens. When you accept that you have limitations without that binding you, because that's the fear, is that it will bind you, then you know that you can learn that, or you can do that, or you can grow into that, or whatever. Until you start with that acceptance, you can't really go there. So we use just a little reminder here. Hope you're still tapping. And so I'm going to move into now the first part of how to do this and how to get this happening. And the first piece of this is a process we call acceptance tapping. And acceptance tapping is where you graft a process of continual tapping onto the pattern and behaviour of the problem, or the feeling reactions around that problem. So the way you do this is, instead of going in and focusing on a problem and trying to push it away, or trying to fix it, or trying to eliminate it, or trying to tap it away, as a lot of people talk about in the tapping world, you're actually applying the tapping to it, and then you're associating and just letting your mind wander freely around the issues and just noticing what happens. You can focus in and pay attention to the body feelings, or to the thoughts and memories and ideas. And what we're doing is we're just adding tapping to them. We are not trying to make the tapping do something to them, and we're not trying to make them do something. We are just bringing acceptance to the process. So, you know, and I always think of the classic example of this that my good friend Dr. David Lake used, which is that, you know, in using this with a woman with severe obsessive compulsive disorder, who was so severely distressed with her obsessions and compulsions that she would take 2 hours to leave the house. She was regularly hospitalized for severe anxiety. She was on really strong medication. And so she came to him and said, what do I do? And he said, well, look, just take this tapping, just this simple tapping, and add it to when you are doing the problem without trying to change anything. And this is the key of the acceptance tapping process, is that you're just being mindful of and notice the feelings and thoughts and so on, or you're just going into the place where the problem happens and going into the pattern, and you're adding tapping to it. So she took the tapping into her checking process, and she's doing the tapping, of course, when she's feeling anxious about, leaving the house. And comes back after a week and she's reduced her checking time by half. It's naturally reduced the level of stress and anxiety down to the point where she's no longer feeling it as much. And progressively over the next few weeks, by just grafting the tapping to the place and the pattern and the times and the behaviours where that was going on, she brought her checking down to 10 to 15 minutes, which is a much more normal amount of time to leave the house. Then she went and had a baby after getting off medication, which was her motivation in the first place. Had a baby with sleep apnea, which means the baby stops breathing every now and then, and was able to survive that just by using this simple process of continual tapping and acceptance rather than denial and pushing. And sometimes, unfortunately, when we try too hard to push against, what you resist persists. So acceptance tapping is not about resisting and pushing against and trying to fix ourselves. It's actually accepting what's there, accepting your feelings, allowing them to move and express freely without saying you express them. Like if you're angry, you pound a pillow. That's an expressive therapy. I mean, you allow the feeling to express and move in your body, and you facilitate that process and just add the tapping to it. And the tapping tends to facilitate that movement of the emotions and at the same time, the ways of thinking. Now, of course, you can work more specifically with tapping, and you can work in a more focused way. But that doesn't mean that you have to come at this from a non-acceptance paradigm. Although, if you can, then you can do the tapping on that, the non-acceptance part. And we'll come back to that in a little while. I just want to give you another piece for those of you who particularly want to go deeper. And that is to realize that really it's the beliefs that are the bigger chunks of this. And so the biggest of big beliefs that you have are what's called your identity beliefs. These are your beliefs about yourself. I am such and such a type of person, or I am not such and such a type of person. And so I want to get some of these out for the people that are on the line, and here's some, just some prompt questions. Some of you have started to answer this, and some of you have already brought these out. Starting with your list of things that you can't accept yourself for. I can't accept myself because of this. I don't accept myself completely because of that. This is what's wrong with me. I did a list one time coming home after a workshop. I was so down on myself. It's about 12, 13 years ago. I'd done a workshop over in Sydney. A whole lot of things had gone wrong. It was unseasonably hot and the air conditioners had broken down, and I became affected by this, and my presentation was affected by this. And then I was down on myself on the way home in the plane, and so I'm actually doing a little bit of gentle tapping like this in the plane. Must have been actually less than that because we had started to use this process, and so I'm just doing some gentle tapping, and I'm just touching the points and just rubbing on the points. And I was journaling. I was actually writing. So back when I'm using pen and paper, and I came up with a list of 42 things I was I didn't like about myself. Just going from that being down on myself, and that kind of tuned me into all that bad stuff. And then I started connecting with all this other stuff I didn't like about myself. Like I'm not a good enough parent, and I yell at my kids. And I'm not a good enough this, that, and the other thing. And so I found 42 things that I spent a bit of time working on after that. So what have you got? What's on your list? What are some of your negative beliefs here? And let's bring them out so we can do. These are ones that you already know. How do you identify some of your unconscious ones, the ones that you're not conscious of? Well, there's three main ways to find them. One is to get into a relationship, and Dave Lake likes to champion that as the best way to find your unconscious blocks because your partner will bring them up. The second one is to think of the things that irritate you about other people. Is anybody, are you still here? Can you hear me? I'm asking people to put in negative beliefs. So I'm hoping you're going to do that. All right, I see Elizabeth, Michelle typing. Good. I want to keep talking the whole time without getting some input. So where was I? I was, yeah, come on, now that I've said that, I've interrupted my own pattern. So someone's going to have to type in to remind me what I was saying. So this was, yeah, I was asking you to bring in stuff about negative beliefs. Okay, I feel others may not accept me, and that relates to ultimately some belief that you have about yourself not being acceptable. That's right. Thank you, Bernadette, defining your unconscious beliefs. So number one is get into a relationship. Number two is to think about the things that irritate you about other people, because the stuff that irritates you about other people represents disowned parts of yourself. It's really interesting that, there's that particular thing that people do irritates you much more than it irritates some other people. So there's something about that triggers something in you that means that part is kind of disowned in you because of your experiences in the past. And the third main way to bring up your unconscious negative beliefs is to set yourself a big goal, and then up will come all your negative beliefs like I'm not good enough to do that, I'm too old to do that, I'm not strong enough to do that, I don't have enough money to do that, or whatever. All that kind of stuff will come up when you do those things. So that's three ways to discover your unconscious blocks. All right, so Elizabeth, you said I feel others may not accept me. Michelle, love that. Love the yeah, being challenged by that recently. So be tapping, because even bringing that up about being challenged by your partner bringing up your issues, if you're tapping on that now, tapping's starting to get into the feelings and emotions and stuff around that. Yeah, Fiona, still get triggered by certain issues and situations. All right, well, ultimately, when you have a situation like that where you're getting triggered, if you want to work on your beliefs, then you want to start trying to dig underneath those reactions to say, okay, what does this mean about me, or what kind of person do I think I am because of this, or what kind of person has these reactions? And then you'll get underneath that to some of your negative beliefs. And the first way to start to treat them is simply just to start tapping. Is to notice the belief or notice the reaction that you have and just add the tapping to them. Sue, I get paralyzed by thought of letting others down. Okay, so if you have that reaction, first of all, you can do tapping on the reaction that you're having and the thought of letting others down. And what does that mean about you? What does that mean? What does that, if you can bring that back to an I am belief, if I'm the kind of person who gets paralyzed by thought of letting others down, that means I am, either I'm the kind of person who lets others down, or I'm too sensitive, or I'm too something or other, or I'm not something or other enough else. What does that mean about you? And then you're going to identify some beliefs behind that, rather than, certainly there's a belief there about, you should always please other people, which we can learn from our parents, and your value comes from how well you satisfy other people and so on. So yeah, okay, so I'm flaky and indecisive. Okay, so the starting point for tapping on that is starting to tap on, I'm flaky or I'm indecisive. And there will often be not just the thought I'm flaky and indecisive, there will be feelings connected with this. And there will ultimately be some events in the past where you learned this. So the simple process is to ask yourself, once you have identified a negative belief, where did I learn this? Who taught me this? And in particular, where did I first learn this? And if you have a feeling that you're starting with, while you're experiencing the feeling, you're certainly want to be tapping, but while you're experiencing the feeling, then ask yourself the question, where have I felt this feeling before? And that will often take you to some of those memories of those places. And you can apply tapping to that, and you can start to get leverage on them. And anyone who knows tapping and knows EFT or knows SET knows that the main way to deal with those past events is to go through the story of what happened, or if you're a visual thinker, run the movie, make what happened into a short movie, and then ultimately you're tapping on the emotionally intense parts of that movie until you can run through that memory without it upsetting you or upsetting you as much. You may have a number of different experiences which provide the emotional supports, like the legs to the tabletop, that hold up the table of your belief. So this is a metaphor which a lot of people in the tapping world use. It was created by a social psychologist, Robert Cialdini. He says a belief is like a tabletop that has legs that support it, and the legs that support it are those, he calls them reference experiences. I call them significant emotional events. And so those significant emotional events are what support that belief structure. And so if you release the attachment to the emotion of those events, you can also release the attachment to the conclusion that you made, the belief that got formed from those events as well. So, all right, Elizabeth, I'm useless in many ways now that I'm retired, despite volunteering. Yeah, interesting. So here you are doing all these good things, and despite that, you have this feeling of being useless, or this belief that you are useless. And so the starting point is tapping on the I'm useless belief as a statement, or however you're experiencing it. And then if it were just a thought, then there wouldn't be an issue. It's the fact that it triggers an emotional internal reaction. So as you're tapping on the thought, I'm useless, pay attention to what's happening in your body, and then just apply the tapping to those feelings, and then start to ask yourself where you learned that, and where you felt those feelings before, and then you can follow the process and do this, go through the story and apply tapping to it and so on. So I'm going to recommend that you go away and do this. I know a lot of people, this process, but it doesn't mean you've applied this to your self-acceptance issues. So see if you can generate a list of past events related to your negative beliefs about yourself, and then work through as many of them as you can using the run the movie or tell a story technique and applying tapping. And you can also apply this intention-based technique, which I'm going to move on to in a moment. Now, before I do that, I just want to mention the 30-day self-acceptance process that I used some years ago, back when I was using more conventional EFT. And some of you have read about this before. Some of you have, I've told this story before. I think it's really a helpful process, and I want to recommend it to those of you who are on the line because it's been one of the most profound experiences in my life that I did. First of all, I was down on myself. I was wasting time. I was playing too many games on computer rather than doing the work that I should have been doing to bring goodness to the world. And so I'm doing some EFT on the frustration with myself and upset about this. And I was journaling it, actually typing it on the computer. And I typed out the EFT setup statement. Even though I have this problem, I deeply and completely accept myself. And I had a massive negative reaction. I do not accept myself for having this problem at all. In fact, I'm really upset at myself having this problem. I'm really down on myself with it. I even almost hate myself for having this problem. And then I suddenly realized that that was the problem, that there was what was happening, and then there was the fact that I was down on myself for having the problem, and that was the problem. That was a bigger problem, if that makes sense. And so I thought, right, well, I actually need to tap on that as the problem. And so I tapped on, I accept myself even though I don't accept myself for having this problem. And then I thought, well, no, I don't. I don't accept myself for not accepting myself because I should accept myself. And so then I kind of blew it out further. It's like, okay, I'm going to accept myself even though I don't accept myself, for not accepting myself and so on. And I started to really get some leverage on this. And I realized that the issue the real issue was not accepting myself. You know, we get over a problem and we feel a little bit better about ourselves, and then we find another reason not to accept ourselves. And so the underlying thing is the non-self-acceptance. And so I decided in that moment I'm going to tap on accepting myself no matter what I'm doing for the next 30 days. And the first thought I had was, you won't do that. So then I applied the tapping to the belief that I wouldn't continue with this. And lo and behold, the next morning I got up and I did it. And I just started to become aware, because now I'm looking for times where I'm not accepting myself, and I wasn't accepting anything. I was upset with the way I was brushing my teeth. I was upset with the way I was parenting. I was upset with the way I was, exercising or not. Even if I was exercising, I wasn't exercising enough. And so I'm doing the tapping the whole time on accepting myself, even though I'm not accepting myself. And there was one time after a few days of this when I went to bed a bit early, and I was just tapping. I'm lying in bed and I'm doing the tapping, and I'm tapping on I accept myself even though I don't accept myself, and I'm intending to bring acceptance to my non-acceptance. And there was a moment when it just, I can't really explain it. It's not like a breakthrough, like you have to smash through a barrier. It was like just a warmth that came through me. And it was like, as this warm feeling came through me, my eyes opened and I saw things in a totally different way. And I realized that I was not the problem. The problem was the problem. So I had some problems in my life, but I wasn't the problem. I've been making myself the problem rather than the problem being the problem. And unless the problem is the problem, you can't solve it. If you are the problem, then, you just nothing you can do in a way. And you can just constantly going down a negative spiral. Anyway, it was an incredible realization to me, and I've never gone back to that point of not knowing that the problem is the problem and I am not the problem. Now, I certainly have had ongoing self-acceptance challenges, but I've never, once you've seen through a doorway to something bigger, you can't not have seen through that. And this is the kind of thing that I'm so hoping that I'll be able to pass on to you. So one thing I recommend is doing this 30-day self-acceptance process. And I also want to recommend adding to that this new intention-based process that I've discovered recently, and I've been using since Christmas time. And so I want to just go through that quickly. I want to give you an example of how to do that. I want to send you off hopefully being able to have enough understanding of this to be able to apply it. It's something that you can add to the tapping, which I hope you are still doing. Thank you. I'm sorry, I haven't been keeping up with the chat. It's a little bit hard. So you say, as you speak, Steve, what I realize, I want to be a different person, but I can't accept that I'm not the person that I want to be. I always thought that I accepted myself as I am. Yeah. And so you're realizing that there's a non-acceptance there. So that's the first point, is realizing that there's the non-acceptance there. And then you want to bring acceptance to that. Now, there'll be a lot of resistance to accepting that, because we don't want to accept that. We want to be where we should be. We want to be the kind of person that we should be. Even people come to our self-acceptance workshops and they say, yes, I'm really upset at myself for not accepting myself. And so, when we were using EFT, instead of having people say at the beginning, even though I have this problem, I deeply and completely accept myself, we found it worked better to have them say, I deeply and completely reject myself. And you should try it. It actually creates a bit of leverage on the problem. And paradoxically, when you're able to embrace that negative side, you're able to see more of the positive side as well. So let me just go through quickly. For those of you who are completely new to this, I know some of you joined me on the Go For It program that I was running recently. I outlined how I discovered this intention-based process. I'm calling it IEP now. I originally was calling it IET, but there was some confusion with that and some other techniques, so I'm now calling it IEP, Intention-Based Energy Process. I had this heel spur, and it laid me up, and it was over Christmas. I was kind of on holidays anyway, which was good, but I was stuck on the lounge. I watched a fair bit of cricket, which was pretty good. But outside that time, I was a bit frustrated, the fact that I couldn't move. And, I was also, there's some areas in my business that I was a little bit frustrated about. So I started tapping on them. And so I'm doing some tapping on all the things that I'm frustrated about and all the problems that I'm having. And I was also using a process called logosynthesis. If you don't know anything about it, I highly recommend you look it up. It was created by William Lammers. There's a brilliant primer online you can read for free about the basics and get into it. It's a fantastic approach. And it's a process of really using intention to retrieve energy that you have bound up in problems and to release energy that's not yours. And I was also doing some work from a guy named Robert Middleton, who he's a student of, he's a non-duality student. He's also a student of Byron Katie's The Work. And he created a process called the Unstuck process. And I recommend you go online and get his ebook on that for free. He's applying the process to marketing because he's a marketing coach and consultant. But the process is fantastic. And so I was using his process and I was finding it was really helping, and I was drawn back into reading Byron Katie's book. You know, she does the work, she calls it. It's a process of addressing the thoughts that are causing your suffering by asking deep down whether they are true. And she says you can only really suffer when you believe a thought that differs with reality. In other words, it's not true. And through this process that I was doing all this stuff, I started to think, okay, I'm doing a lot of tapping on problems. I need to do some tapping on my goals and my intentions. I was drawn to reread Byron Katie's book called Loving What Is. Fantastic book. Go get it and read it. It's wonderful. Anyway, she has this line in there, a thought is harmless unless we believe it. It's not our thoughts, but the attachment to our thoughts that causes suffering. And I thought, yeah, it's really the emotional attachment to the thought that causes the problem. And so then I'm kind of musing on this, and I'm thinking, okay, it's not the thought that's the problem, it's the emotional attachment to the thought. And the tapping works. When the tapping works, it releases the emotional attachment. So if you have a thought, you know, like I'm not disciplined enough was an example that came up in the last group when I ran the webinar this morning. And so if you have the thought, I'm not disciplined enough, for some of you, you're going to have an emotional attachment to that. And some of you are like, no, that doesn't apply to me at all. And so the tapping works to release that emotional attachment so you can start to see that you are or that you can be or whatever, rather than being stuck in I'm not thinking. The work that Byron Katie uses also releases that attachment through an inquiry-based process of asking, is this true? And getting right down deep inside to find out the real answer to that question. And it occurred to me, what if we could use intention? What if we could use intention to release the emotional attachment? Now, I was aware, of course, you know, William Lammers' approach to that is essentially using intention. He says using the power of words. And Dr. Larry Nims has a process where you use, you know, you create an instruction to your subconscious mind, and then you create a cue word to initiate the process of releasing the fear and anger and sadness and trauma in his approach called Be Set Free Fast. And Robert Smith uses intention, and you know, there's ask and receive. Tom Altaffer and Sandy Radomski use that in their process called ask and receive. So I thought, what if we could just use intention to release our emotional attachment? So I brought up something that I was upset about and concerned about, and I thought, right, okay, I'm going to form the intention, simple intention. And so I said, I release all my emotional attachments to this. Now, I can't remember exactly what it was at the time, but I said that statement. I thought it in my mind. I release all my emotional attachments to this problem. And I went, huh. I thought, well, that's interesting. Okay. What about this? Okay, I release all my emotional attachments to this. And I started going through all the different aspects, as we're trained to do with tapping, of this problem that were coming up, and I progressively just released the emotional attachment. Now, I was doing tapping as well, but by using this simple statement, I was starting to move through those aspects very, very quickly, much more quickly than normal. And then I noticed, okay, the feeling's in my chest, and it's kind of like a constricted feeling. I thought, well, what if I could use intention just to restore the flow, the energy flow, because that's what it is. It's if it's a constriction to energy flow in that area. And so I added the second sentence. I said, I recite energy flow to my chest. And I went, and my chest opened up, my breathing opened up, and I started to feel different. I thought, well, this is interesting. Anyway, of course, just like with tapping, I'm like, well, okay, let's test this, let's test this, let's test this. And I started using it on everything. I started using this statement on all, these two statements on all kinds of things. One thing I have learned, this statement here, the first one, that does the bulk of the work. And if you haven't really applied that to all of the different things that are triggering you, then you may not get the same leverage when you use the second one. And the real test is that if you have a feeling and you say, I restore the right energy flow to this area, and it doesn't shift, then you know that there's still something that's triggering you. There's another aspect that you need to address or you need to release the emotional attachments to. Now, of course, with doing tapping, you know how to do that with tapping. If you've learned this, you can apply tapping to that process. But you can now also use this intention process to do it. And, as some of you know, I've created a way of doing this for manifesting your goals, and that's why I put into the Go For It program. I'll be releasing that another version of that now that we have people that have gone through that and finished that. I'll be letting you know about that in future. But ultimately, what we want to do is to use this process to release our emotional attachments to all the past traumas and hurts, and not just to past traumas, as well as we need to use this to release our attachment to future fantasies and projections where we are experiencing things that aren't really going to happen and upsetting ourselves. And so when we do that, we're going to be able to be back in our normal life, and it won't be normal because we're able to be present and living life at a way where we are fully available for life. And it's a great, great place to be. So I want to give you an example of this, and wow, I'm aware, man, the time. So, I thought I was bringing this stuff together last night, and I had so much stuff. You know probably that I have a 30-day self-acceptance program, or that I've written. I've done a whole series on this, and we've run workshops on this. And so to do a 1-hour webinar and try and get this across was a challenge, and I had so much stuff. And so I thought, okay, what am I thinking? What am I feeling about this? And my thought was, it's a mess. And so I applied the simple intention. I release all my emotional attachments to it's a mess. Now, you can apply that intention statement to I release all my emotional attachments to this thought that it's a mess or this belief that it's a mess, but I find it's better to just do it on whatever the thing is, just in the form that you are thinking it or noticing it. So I said I release all my emotional attachments to it's a mess. And instantly, I started to feel a bit more peaceful. But what I've learned from this process is you've got to let it process for a while. In fact, I've learned that from Willem Lammers, who has his own approach, which is a little bit more complex than this, but it's absolutely fantastic, and I recommend that you use it because I don't think it's doing exactly the same thing. So then I just scanned through. I noticed I had a bit of tension in the back of my head, so I used the second statement. I said, I restore the right energy flow to the back of my head. And I noticed that the feeling moved, and then I had some tension in my neck. So then I used the statement again, I restore the right energy flow to my neck. And as that started to shift, I had a different thought. I need to reduce it down to the key parts. Okay, so that thought comes up, and then followed by that is the negative, if you like, the non-self-accepting belief, which is underneath this. I'm not good at organising. And then I thought, right, okay, let's apply it to that. I release all my emotional attachments to not being good at organising. Big sigh, chest starts to open up, and as that shift starts to happen, I start having the thought, I just need to do it. I haven't practiced this, and I've had resistance to it in the past. I like to be free-flowing and do things my own way, and without structure, and so that's just, I haven't done enough of it really. And so I started feeling more free. I started to think, I can actually embrace organising. I don't have to be perfect. And I started also remembering some times when I had successfully organised things in the past. How ridiculous to believe I'm not good at organising. Yes, I have some areas where that's been a challenge, but there's been plenty of things that I've organised really well, such as when I did my, way back when I did my tertiary admissions exam, you know, my research and so on. So again, I let that go from, and I start to scan through my body and my mind. And next comes up is the doubt, and this is the connection with you. They, as in you, will think that my organisation is a pathetic effort. And so I apply the intention of that. I release all my emotional attachments to this fantasy of them rejecting my pathetic attempts at organising. Literally a smile spread across my face. The thought came up, it's all okay. Some of them will, some of them won't. That's their stuff. And for me, my philosophy, success, not perfection. And I essentially, if I'm going to put that out to people, I've got to live my own philosophy. And that process, this whole process, took about maybe 10 minutes. And you can see, you know, I'm starting to get leverage even on a couple of my underlying beliefs, and freeing up myself. It's interesting, this thing about organising. It's obviously an issue that's come to a head recently for me, and I start to feel freer about going into that and exploring that further. Whereas before, organising was a constraining force to me. Now it feels like it's something that I can explore. So this is what can happen, and it's just a simple example. You know, I've been using this intention process with people since, you know, I tried it out for a month or so. I started, you know, I passed it on to my wife. She got results on just about everything she used it with, just from the simple explanation like I've given you today. And, you know, I passed it on to Dave Lake. He started, you know, he's been telling me some brilliant results with his clients. I started putting it into workshops, started using it with coaching clients, and the results have been fantastic for people, and I hope that they will be for you. Obviously, you know, there's some more distinctions, but just what I've told you has been what I've told a lot of other people, and that's been enough for them to start to get some results. So where do we go from here? Here's my suggestions. I'm going to recommend that you do a 30-day self-acceptance trial, and you do it with tapping, and you add this process of applying the intentions that I've just outlined for you, and see where it goes for you. So for the next 30 days or so, tap on whatever you find that you're not accepting yourself for, and then focus on two completely different ideas. Number one, that you're going to accept yourself despite the fact that you're doing this. And number two, even though you don't accept yourself for doing this, you're going to accept yourself anyway, even though it's not acceptable. That's essentially the 30-day self-acceptance process that I started some years back. And if you go online to our website and you look under personal development, you can find some articles and stuff, and also that original series that I wrote back when I did that 30-day self-acceptance process. Now, also, for those of you who want to do more, I want to have an opportunity to help you. I would love to do this. I can't do so much in a free webinar, and nor can my family get by only on free programs. That's just the reality of it. I love to help people to get more freedom and get more life. So I want to offer you something. I said at the start, you know, for those of you who stay here, I'm going to give you a special offer that's not going to apply to those that didn't sign up for this, or they'll get last dibs, if you like. You know, I have a 30-day self-acceptance program. The first three things mentioned here are part of that program already. Originally, I did four 1-hour teleclasses, and I charged people $99 for those. Then I put together this 30-day program of tips and strategies and so on. Excuse me, you want to see the last slide, Bernadette? Oh, about what to do. You want to get down the full process. All right, I'm going to give you a few more seconds to get that process down, okay? But basically, you're just going to tap on all the stuff that you find that you're not accepting yourself for, and you're going to apply that intention-based process. I'm going to send you the recording of this, and you can go back over the recording. You can move forward through and find this if you need to at that time, because I'm aware that we're now about 6 minutes over the hour, and I know some people are going to have to go. All right, so time is up on that one. So here's this is the things that I already put together before. I did those teleclasses. I've got the recordings of them. I created 30 days of self-acceptance, which is a process that you work through that people have been getting great results with tips and inspiration and strategies every day to help you move through to your own self-acceptance. over 30 days. It includes an audio series I did with Jessica Ortner on finding gifts in your shadow. And I'm now offering you the chance, if you want to be involved in a live webinar group coaching program. You get all of that other stuff as well, and you get this program, which I'm kind of giving it a value of $149 I would charge for it on its own. I'm going to let you have the whole lot, which includes the entire self-acceptance 30-day home study program with all the audios and all the 30 days of tips and so on. And this for $149 is only 40 places. Now, if you already have that self-acceptance program, you've purchased it from me as well, then it's, for you, it's going to be just $49 for you to do the 6 hours of group coaching. I'm going to use this intention process with you and use tapping with you and work through with people on their issues. Everyone can tap along and borrow benefits, and it's just a wonderful group experience to do that. And those of you who've been with me in the Go For It program, you know what that's like in terms of that community. I created a page where this offer is kind of outlined, and the dates. The program starts in 3 weeks' time. It will then be now. You can get, of course, you can start getting the 30 days messages, and you can get those audios that have already been done. You can get them straight away and start working on that. I'll also send the recording from today. You can go through the process that I've outlined, and you can get the coaching will start in 3 weeks' time, and then it will be weekly for 4 weeks. So we'll kind of do it over a month. And the offer, which is only going to you and the people that came to this morning's webinar so far. So we sold out these 2 webinars, 100 this morning, 100 this afternoon. And so this 200 people are getting this first. It's at www.eftdownunder.com/SA-coach. Now, if you go on there, that will give you the dates and the times. Unfortunately, I will say for the people up in Europe and the UK, it's more US friendly this time because the last program that I run was more Europe friendly. It will work for people in Australia and thereabouts in terms of timelines. And Elizabeth, you're saying it doesn't matter, you're wide awake whenever. That's fine for you. For others, I certainly have people who want to come along and they're happy to get them and just get the recordings and tap along and stuff like that. If you can be live, though, it's so much better to be able to do this process live and for everybody to work together live. Look, our time, as they say in the clinical world, is up for today. I want to say I appreciate the fact that you've spent this time with me. I hope that you've found the stuff that I have been able to share with you in this time has been helpful, that it has been content that you've been able to use and that you will be able to use to help you to go further on your self-acceptance journey. And please keep in touch. I really love to get feedback. The email address here is admin@eftdownunder.com, admin@eftdownunder.com, and would love to to get your feedback on this, and also your feedback on taking away this process and doing your own 30-day self-acceptance process. I'll send you out the, where in the website? I'm going to put that offer page up again. So it's this is only on this, only on here at the moment, so you won't be able to go there and find it, or you shouldn't be able to do. You might be if you're clever, but you should not be able to get this. I'm not going to put this out to the rest of the world until tomorrow. And so for the next 24 hours, it's open to you people, good people, as well as the people who are at this morning's process as first dibs. So thank you again. All the best. Please keep in touch. I look forward to working with you if it works for you to be part of that process. And if it's not, I really wish you well. And I hope that these techniques and the stuff that I've shared has been good for you. And I've really enjoyed this. Thank you so much. Let me turn off this recording. Cheers. Bye-bye.